How's it going? I'm Chris, and I'm making an N64 style 3D collectathon. Last week we pretty much just had nothing but hopes and dreams, but I've made a lot of progress this time. The ground AI followed the player now. I used the crowd AI blueprint so that the enemies don't just walk through each other, they sort of go around each other. It's obviously not perfect, but I'll tweak at it over this month until it feels right. I had some issues with the nav mesh working, which led to me finding out that the project file was corrupt. So I had to make a new project essentially. But I could just transfer some of the stuff over and then recreate the smaller bits, so it wasn't too hard. And since I'm at the start of development, it didn't really take too much time to do. I still need to work on the flying enemies, navigation, as well as how the boss is going to work. And on that topic, I still need to model the boss. I've modeled the 3 basic enemies, and I just kept putting the boss off. But once I start working on the gameplay, I'll start to model the boss and then get all the mechanics for him figured out. I added knockback when the player gets hit by the enemy. It used to just drive straight through you and then you'd constantly be getting hit. So this just helps the game feel. The player also bounces on top of the enemy's head when they kill them. It doesn't feel perfect, but I want to have it so that you can sort of chain kill enemies, like bounce across them like a weird combo system. I think that'll be fun to do. I also delayed the enemy's death for game feel. It was just odd having them immediately die. This helped since they added a drop to the enemy. And before, when it was an instant death, you'd just fall straight and collect it, so you didn't even know there was an item there. So now there's a second delay. And the bounce, the player bounces off, and then the explosion. So then you can see they dropped an item. The item itself is just a placeholder until I figure out what I'm actually putting there. This could be a collectible that if you have enough of, you can trade into some of the villagers, and then they'll give you a reward, maybe a star. The map went through a lot of iterations and changes this month. At first I started just blocking out areas that I thought would be nice, and then I came to realize that the actual map was too small, so I had to go back to Maya and just like upscale it a lot. This allowed me to add some deviation to the ground floor, so it wasn't just a flat plane, there was lumps and hills, and I could add a river then in front of the tree. So it's come along quite nicely in the end, but it's a lot of iteration. Early on I did some sketches on top of blockouts I had of the map that could help me figure out what's going to be in each area, so I still need to model the market village that's going on top of this tree. And since I've moved stuff about, it might need to change a bit more, it might need to be bigger now. But having this sketch can help me later when I go to actually make it. Another one of the sketches was of the big tree and just took a pan view of the forest. From this I seen the tree was maybe a bit too straight, so later when I went to model it I added more nooks and crunks and bunks to it, just to make it stand out more from being a tube. I added a wall around the forest, and I'm going to texture it to have like sort of a thick tree line, but at the minute it's just sort of bunch of green. And then behind that I added another wall that I'm going to display mountains on. Again, this is all like basic sort of sketch ideas of what it is. I'm going to finalize the art at some point, but that's just almost like a block out. Oh my god! For the river I made a water effect so that when the player walks through it they'll go slower. This will help me for later when there's a level dedicated to water. So now that I've got like a basic map, I'm definitely going to focus on the gameplay next month. I also remodeled the hub world. Originally it was just like a block out design, and now it's an actual model. I think it looks a lot nicer. I showed off on X a bunch of the different stages of the block out to the final model, and I think it's comparatively it's looking alright. Like I said earlier, there was a big issue about the project being corrupt. This is something I noticed early on but didn't want to believe, maybe, because the level streaming wasn't working. Level streaming is when you have all the levels sort of combined into one persistent level, and then you can load them in when you need that specific area. And in Unreal it's supposed to have them all sort of display at once, like in this big main scene you can see them all appear at once like they are here. But in the previous project file it wasn't doing that, and I looked up how to fix that and I couldn't really find anything for my specific issue. So I just persisted with it for a bit until I found the nav mesh issue, which the nav mesh issue was caused by the persistent level issue, because for the nav mesh to actually navigate in each world has to be visible in the editor, but because they weren't, the nav mesh wasn't picking up the mesh. It wasn't naving the mesh. So I made a new project just to test, and then it was working on that one, so I just had to move everything over. And it took a whole day, but now that it's done, everything should just work now. So that's good. In terms of mechanics added this month, I added coins so that you can replenish your health like in Mario 64. And these are also just as collectibles, so you can purchase things later. Maybe get a star like in Mario Odyssey, you can purchase moons. Maybe have that in the market. I also added a pickup for the glasses. because as you progress through the game, you're going to collect a new power, and then when you go back to the hub world, you can then access a new set of worlds. This will sort of lock off progression a wee bit, and then make the player have to backtrack to get all the stars. So maybe you'll need the blue glasses in the first world here, but then you don't get them until a couple worlds later, so it's just a bit of cohesion, I suppose. And then of course the water mechanic, which is really simple, and there will be a couple stages that use water later, so it's good to have this early on so I can block out with it and have it actually working. I did some basic UI and menus. The HUD is modeled after the one from Mario 64, because it's the health bar have been in the middle of the screen and then the thing surrounding it. I want to have it so there's an icon for the player in the middle. At the moment it's just the blob from the original game idea, but now that I've redesigned the player, I want to have a picture of him in the middle, and then I want to give the surrounding wee blocks maybe a wood texture like they had in the Mario 64 HUD, and the menus are just basic buttons, just so I can have something there for now, so that when I go back it's just a case of adding art to them. I did focus a lot on doing UI in my last year of uni, so I can add a lot of different game feel animations and sound effects to this to make it feel nicer to play, and they actually make it fit the vibe of the game rather than just being static buttons. And then lastly, I mentioned earlier, I redesigned the player. This took a whole week maybe. I spent a while trying to figure out what design I was actually going for, and then when I realized, oh, it can be a monkey, then I was all for it and designed this monkey to like the sketches I designed to look like N64. I had a look at the Mario model and the Banjo model and thought which one would make more sense for the game, or which one would be, easier to animate. And since the Mario model is broken up into segments, each part can be animated separately, and the Banjo model is all one mesh, I thought the Mario model would probably be handier for me. So then in Maya I modeled this guy. I pretty much traced the Mario model. I could go back and change it maybe if I want it to be more unique, but at the moment this one works. I grabbed the original model from Mario 64 and then dissected them, and then I modeled just each section individually and then combined it at the end. The rigging process took way too long. It took 3 attempts, which then I realized that the Maya file was corrupt. I hope this isn't foreshadowing for the rest of the project that 2 of the files already have been corrupt, but I got that sorted. I got it rigged. He now works, so I can start to animate him this month. And then I have him into the scene, and he works, but he's T-posing like a Chad. If you want to follow me on Twitter/X, the link will be in the description. I tweet every Tuesday, and sometimes in between. That's just so you can see more regular updates of the game. So yeah, I think that's everything I've done. It's been a busy month. I've got a lot done. I didn't expect to get this much done, and I still don't expect to get this much done next month. I might do, but at some point the workflow is definitely going to get longer. But for now I've made a lot of progress, and I'm really happy with where the game is at the minute. Definitely focusing on gameplay more than models and map this month. Obviously in terms of like the map though, I do have to work on like puzzles and stuff and the block out for different areas. I'm going to segment the map a little bit like how Banjo-Kazooie did it, where each sort of star is in a different area, sort of self-contained puzzles almost. That's part of the reason why I made the map bigger. But now that most of that's out of the way for now, I can work on mechanics, really make sure the game feels nice to play. And hopefully by next month I can have a demo of it, potentially. It's a big potentially. Thanks for watching. At the minute, the first devlog has the nice number of views, which is pretty cool. That's a lot more than I usually get on regular videos, so thanks. Alright, see ya.